As a brief introduction for some background on how exactly this happened, allow me to say I'm an old school metalhead. I travel around my tri-state area to see various heavy metal shows. The town I live in is a small one, with no real musical scene outside of hip-hop and pop music. No venue here has anything I'd like to actually pay money to see. As such, I'm forced to travel at least an hour or so away if I want to see any shows. This has me often traveling with my wife, who is my favorite concert buddy, usually clear across the state to see concerts. There's a particular venue we love to frequent, but it's a good 3 to 3.5 hour drive away. However, it always has great metal acts playing there, many coming in from Europe. When we go to this place, we usually stay in a hotel casino that's about 3-4 blocks from the venue. It's a short walk. This particular night, we just finished seeing Dark Tranquillity, a Swedish melodic death metal band. It was about 2 a.m. when we got out of the venue, as we'd stay behind a little bit afterwards, hoping to either meet Dark Tranquillity or some of the opening bands afterwards, as often happens at small venues like this. And we did. So it was a little while after the show before we actually got out of there. So we leave and begin to make the walk back to the hotel. There are tons of fellow metalheads milling out as well, and it's kind of a general idea for many of us to stay in the same hotel since it's right around the corner. Like I said, just a few blocks over, so we're all kind of walking in this large mob. Now, if you're into the heavy metal scene and frequent live shows, you'll know that it's a fairly tightly knit community. We're all there for the same reason, so everyone is usually pretty friendly and talkative, discussing the show, past shows, meeting band members, etc. Just lots of jovial discussion. I'd had to piss for over an hour at this point, but hadn't wanted to dip into the restroom during the end of the band's show, and afterward, the restroom was packed with a line flowing back out onto the floor. At this point, though, it's hitting me pretty hard as I'd also had a few drinks in the club. So rather than wait till we got back to our room, I decide I needed to stop in at the public restroom down at the bottom of the parking garage and take this piss. It needed to happen. My wife doesn't mind as she said she needed to piss anyway herself, so we split off. I come into the restroom and think I'm by myself, so I hit the first urinal there and start to have at it. As I'm about to finish up, the door creaks open, and this rather large, bald fellow comes in. He stops dead in his tracks right in front of the door for a moment, and takes me in, like he didn't expect anyone else to be in there. Then the guy goes to the sink as I'm doing the same to start washing his face. I'm washing my hands and he looks over at me with water running off his nose and asks what I'm doing out here so late. I just explain that I'm coming back from a concert without looking at him. He then starts to ask what kind of music. I explain to him that it was a heavy metal concert. He kind of shrugs and nods and just says, "Cool." I'm finished up and drying my hands now, and he turns around and grabs my upper arm lightly and says, "Hey, then maybe you're interested in buying something I have." He starts to rifle through his jean pockets and mumbles that it's there somewhere. I try to politely tell him that I'm not interested and need to get back out, and he sort of shuffles in front of me quickly, semi-blocking the door. He looks kind of angry at this point and juts out his shoulders. He's probably a good foot taller than me. I'm a fairly short guy, so this isn't really hard to do, but still. And he says, "Look, man, no need to be rude. Don't be a dick." I again decline, trying my best to stay polite. At this point, I'm beginning to tense up, anticipating a scuffle. The problem is, I'm fucking exhausted. I just spent the better part of 3 hours jumping around and smashing my body into other bodies. Quite frankly, I'm ready to collapse. The guy grabs my arm again, this time a little harder, and goes, "Hey man, I'm fucking talking to you." My sense of trying to be reasonable has left me at this point, as I'm too tired to give a shit anymore. Knowing I shouldn't, I tell him, "Man, you're the one being an asshole. I'm tired and just trying to get the fuck out of here, so move out of the way." He shoves me, not really too hard, but from the chest, and steps in closer to the gap saying, "I was trying to be nice. Fuck you. You trying to start shit with me?" It runs through my head that while I almost always usually have a pocket knife on me in case things like this happen to go down, I'm completely unarmed because I knew I couldn't bring the knife with me into the venue club through their security. So, I'm preparing for the worst as the guy seems hopped up on something and is a good deal bigger than me, and I'm in approximately zero shape to fight. It's about to get hairy. The guy's blocking my way to the door, as it's a pretty small restroom. And just as I'm thinking this, the door creaks open and I hear laughter and talking start to flood in. The guy lets go of my arm and turns around to look as a group of 5 guys in black t-shirts, studded leather jackets adorned with dozens of band logo patches and jeans strolls into the restroom. One of them is a Hispanic fellow with long curly dark hair. He sees me and waves and exclaims, "Ah, dude, what's up? That was a sick fucking show tonight, wasn't it?" One of his friends, another Hispanic guy with a shaved head, I think, took in what might have been going on in here and says, "This guy giving you shit, man?" I look back to my bald assailant. A worried expression has crossed over his features. Even being a pretty big guy, he realizes that he's now got 5 guys at his back, a few of them about his height too. And they're all pretty decked out. They would probably look pretty intimidating to the average person not at a metal concert. He glances at me for a split second before saying, "Nah, man, we were just talking." I interject quickly, fed up with this jackass, and say, "And now we're done talking. Get the fuck out of my way. Next time, don't be a dickhead," and start to barge past him, pushing him aside. The Hispanic dude with long hair turns back to me as I'm passing and says, "Have a good night, man." And I meet up with my wife, who decided to stay outside for a smoke. She asks what took so long, joking that I had to take a huge shit, and I tell her about it as we're going up the elevator into the hotel. We decide to stop at the Inn Hotel bar and grill before returning to our room, as we're both kind of hungry. After ordering, we're standing by the counter for a few minutes and I hear laughter and loud voices coming in from the lobby. We turn around. The same group of 5 guys is coming our way back toward the snack shop and bar and grill. The long-haired guy sees us and goes, "Oh, holy shit, dude, look at this shit," and points to the window looking out of the lobby into the entrance of the parking garage. There's the bald guy down there, laying on the ground and being handcuffed with 2 police officers over him. One of them has his taser in hand and its line is connected to the guy's side. He starts to tell me that apparently the guy had stuck around in the restroom as they left, and one of them went over to a parked police car a few aisles over in the garage after noticing there was an officer in it. They told him that some guy was on something in there and that he'd been acting threatening and kind of shady. So apparently the officer and his partner had decided to step inside the restroom and take a look. As the guys from the concert were going up the elevator to the hotel lobby, it's a see-through glass tube elevator, they'd heard some shouting and looked down to see the guy being dragged out of the restroom by both officers. I guess he'd resisted or something, because apparently there'd been a scuffle before one of them tasered him, and then, as we all saw now, he was getting cuffed and dragged into the police car. We all had a good laugh about it and talked while we waited on our food. Nice guys. I connected with one of them on Facebook, and we still laugh about that guy on occasion.
This is the story of how a creepy encounter with a scary man at a harbour cafe saved me from something even more terrifying. It was in the autumn of 1994, and I was 19 years old. At the time, my dad had been working abroad for almost 6 months, and I was planning a surprise visit. My dad and I had always been close. I'm an only child, and my mother died of cancer when I was still a baby, so it was just my dad and I really. A tiny little family, but he made up for it by being the most awesome parent ever. Now that I wasn't a little kid anymore, I appreciated that more and more. I had booked a ticket and was ready to go. It was going to be great fun to surprise him with a visit. I had to take a ferry though, and I had just gotten my driving license, and I felt really unhappy about having to drive my little car on board the ferry, and I decided not to bring the car at all, and just rent one once I got there. Having time to spend, I decided to have a coffee at a nearby cafe since I was early and they hadn't started letting people onto the ferry just yet. At the cafe, there were lots of truck drivers, and I soon realised I was the only woman there. One man, a 40-ish bloke with ice blue eyes and tattoos all over, was eyeing me from across the room, not even trying to be discreet about it. I got up to leave, feeling suddenly very uncomfortable, and to my utter horror, he followed. What do I do now? I asked myself. This was before everyone owned a cell phone, I might add. I decided to try and look busy, and maybe he would leave me alone. So I pulled out my ticket and tried to look at it like I was reading it carefully, when he suddenly snatched it from my hand and said,
"I'm on the same boat. I'll have hours of your company then. How lovely."
In a voice that was an absurd combination of jovial flattery and hidden hostility. I felt very strongly that if I got on that boat with this man who now knew my booking details, I'd be in grave danger. I can't explain why the feeling was so overwhelming, but it was, and I decided there and then not to get on that boat. The ticket had been cheap anyway, I could get on the next one instead. I hid in the ladies' room until I knew the ferry had left, and then I went to rebook my ticket. The story could have ended here, a creepy encounter with a stalkerish man, but it doesn't. I was right in the assumption that getting on the ferry would have been unbelievably dangerous. Have you figured it out yet? The date was September 28th, 1994. The name of the ship was MS Estonia, and that cold night she sank in the Baltic Sea, taking 852 people with her, resulting in the worst ferry catastrophe to strike Sweden to this day. I still recall the day with horror, and wonder what would have happened if this creepy man had not taken an interest in me. If I had not listened to my instinct, and gotten on board instead of waiting for the next boat, would I have been among the survivors? Or would my dad have seen my name on the list of lives lost in the Baltic Sea?